I'm Ezra Levan. It's May 15th, and you're watching Battleground. Hey everybody, welcome back. Yesterday was a big day in the Middle East, at least for Israel and America. I think they were sort of calling the bluff on decades of this weird third rail. You can't say Jerusalem is the capital city of Israel. You can't have your embassy there. And as with so many things, Donald Trump said, says you, I'm just going to do that. Says you, I can't say to North Korea, we'll blow you up if you don't come to peace. Says you, I can't pull out of the UN global warming scheme. He just does all these calling of the bluffs, and the world doesn't fall. Now, there were some reactions from the terrorist group Hamas that runs a theocratic dictatorship in Gaza Strip. They had a massive riot, but that's sort of what Hamas does. They're terrorists. They found that they are not very effective when they militarily try to attack Israel. Israel is pound for pound one of the best militaries in the world. So they do the next best thing. If they can't kill Israelis, they use their own people as cannon fodder as part of the PR battle. Hamas, if you look at it, it's not being particularly effective as a military force against Israel. I mean, sure, they kill women and children, but militarily, Israel is at very little risk from Hamas. But the PR damage done by Hamas is their central value. That's one of the reasons why they're terrorists and not a real military force. Anyway, so we'll talk a little bit about the Gaza reaction from Hamas, but it was big news, and I have a few stories about that today. We'll show you some headlines around the world, ranging from the New York Daily News to Haaretz, which is the left-wing big newspaper in Israel itself. And I want to remind you what we do every day from 12 noon to 1 p.m. Eastern. We hop on this Google Super Chat, it's called. It's a new YouTube function they only recently invented. I don't know how many weeks ago, maybe it's months now, where I chat with you real time. That's normal. You can make a comment on the right. That's normal. But this Super Chat thing, it's fun. You can pay a couple bucks or $5 or I don't know, as much as you want, I guess, and your comment will be in a bright highlighted color, and it'll stay on the screen proportionate to how many dollars you chip in. And it's fun. It's bright colored, so I can see it out of the corner of my eye on my computer screen here. And more to the point, it helps us pay the bills here at the Rebel.media. We are 100% viewer supported, receiving no government funds, unlike, let's say, the state broadcaster, the CBC, which gets $1.5 billion, or other state broadcasters around the world, from the BBC to Russia Today. So I see there are some people watching now already, some people commenting. Ali Clark, thank you very much for joining us again. You've been a very generous supporter on the Super Chats. John Zealand, I recognize your name. Blake Runner, hello to you. Celix says there is a buzz in the audio and is coming in left ear only. Well, I don't know. We're working on that, is what my production colleague says. Entry required says, hello, New Yorker in Sweden here. Well, everybody's joining in. I want to jump right in. And I mentioned yesterday that the United States moved its embassy to Jerusalem, which is where the capital city is. It's where their legislature, called the Knesset, is. It's where the Supreme Court is. It's where the Prime Minister and the President of Israel live. It's where most of their, government agencies are located. So of course it's the capital. When Brazil moved its capital city to Brasilia, the rest of the world didn't say, no, we're going to decide where your capital is, and it ain't, and it's Rio, it's not Brasilia. No, it's the country that decides where its capital is, or it's not a sovereign country, and then why would you have an embassy there at all? Now, the United States invited various other diplomatic delegations to attend the ceremony yesterday. Donald Trump himself did not attend. He was in Washington, D.C. His wife, the First Lady Melania, had a surgery, and he was on hand for that. But Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner were there, as was the U.S. ambassador and the Deputy Secretary of State from the U.S. Over 80 other diplomatic delegations were invited. Only 33 attended. The others, I don't know, having some sort of boycott or something. I should point out for our Canadian viewers that Justin Trudeau instructed the Canadian embassy not to send a delegate to this event, to literally boycott this event. not just to be passive or just say, okay, we're not going to make that move ourselves, but to literally boycott it. You know who else boycotted? I see in the news that South Africa boycotted it, and they issued some condemnation. And Turkey, the neo-fascist Islamist Turkey, that was once such a secular ally of the West. It's still part of NATO, but I think in name only. Turkey withdrew recalled its ambassadors from both Israel and the United States. Why are you in NATO still? I mean, you are the bad guys, and I just wish we would start to realize that when it comes to Turkey. I want to show you two of the grossest media coverages of this from democratic media. I'm not talking about from state media like Al Jazeera, although let me point out the obvious. Sunni Arab states are not the ones who are revved up about this. There's no rioting in Jordan. There's no rioting in Saudi Arabia. No, first of all, they don't have the free press. They probably don't even know what's going on. But like I say, with Donald Trump saying the emperor has no clothes, no one really, this guy does not follow with any of these things. The only place there was a hostile reaction was in Gaza, where Hamas fomented a bit of a riot on the border, and in the salons of the West, where they hate Israel and hate Donald Trump, and this convergence of Israel and Trump was just too much for them. Let me start by showing you the New York Daily News. There's a bit of a tabloid culture in there. Hold this up there for a long time. I want to talk about this. The New York Daily News is anti-Trump. They're a bitter rival of the New York Post, also a tabloid that is generally pro-Trump. Just let me unpack this, so keep this on the screen for a while. That's obviously Ivanka, who was a surrogate for her father in his stead. Ivanka, of course, converted to Judaism, so this wasn't just a ceremonial duty on her part. She probably found it a meaningful trip. So that's a picture of her in front of the cornerstone. She was pointing to the cornerstone, but the New York Daily News obviously photoshopped a different photo there of rioting Palestinians in Gaza. Gaza is no longer part of Israel, just to remind you. It once was part of Israel, then it was part of Egypt, now it's part of, then it was part of Israel, and now it's run by Hamas. So it is a different country. It's not part of Israel. Israel has no sovereignty over it. Israel does not have soldiers there. Israel allows some traffic to go between the two places. Hundreds of trucks go back and forth every day. Israel supplies Gaza with basic utilities, electricity, natural gas, things of that sort. But it's a different country. So there were mass riots fomented by Hamas with the instruction just to walk across the border, infiltrate into Israel. And that's a different country. It just doesn't happen that way. And some of these Hamas protesters were just protesters. Some of them were just people who got caught up in it. I see from news reports that Hamas sent out more than 100,000 text messages encouraging people to come and walk to the Israeli border, and saying that the Israeli border guards had abandoned their positions and were retreating. So Hamas was telling its civilians, you can just walk on through. Hamas was also giving people directions to the closest civilian residences, presumably to do what Hamas does, which is kill the Jews. So there were some, I suppose, ordinary Gazans who got caught up in this, but of course many of those who came to riot and infiltrate the border were actual terrorists. Many of them were armed, either with small arms or Molotov cocktails or things of that sort. So put that New York Daily News back on. I just wanted to give the full context. So put that front page back on. This is in New York City, a city with 1 million Jews. Daddy's little ghoul. As if it was Ivanka's fault that 55 rioters, you could call them protesters, but when you have a Molotov cocktail, when you have small arms, that's typically not a protester now, it's a riot. They're governed by and directed by a terrorist group. Hamas is a terrorist group in the United States, according to their laws, and in Canada too. So it's not like this was a group of Greenpeace protesters. This was a terrorist group. So to blame Ivanka that this was her fault, and let me read this subheadline there: 55 slaughtered in Gaza, but Ivanka all smiles at Jerusalem embassy unveiled. So that implies they were slaughtered. Now, some of them were civilians, and they were shot by Israeli snipers before they could infiltrate the border. It's true. But slaughtered by whom and for what? Is Hamas not culpable for this? Telling their people to go up against an armed border against a terrorist state? This implies that Ivanka Trump not only caused the death of 55, if you believe Hamas propaganda. I'm sure there were people killed. We'll just have to take the word of a terrorist group that it was 55. Slaughtered by whom? And that Ivanka should perhaps have let that Hamas terrorist propaganda effort wipe the smile off her face and turn this historic occasion into a day of mourning, or as the Arabs would say, a Nakba, a day of tragedy. This is more overheated than the Arab press, than the press in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Egypt, Jordan, which don't care, or if they were critical. This is so over the top and so ghoulish. The ghouls here are not Ivanka. The ghouls is the Daily News. I wonder how this goes over in New York City, a city with 1 million Jews in it. I think their Trump derangement syndrome plus their anti-Israel derangement finally combined, and it's just so gross. But the only people who can top that is the leading liberal newspaper in Israel itself, called Haaretz, which is the Hebrew word for the land. This tweet says it all. Hold this tweet up there. The Trump administration, which openly supports Israel's alt-right government, continues years of U.S. coddling. Okay, now you just got to keep this up there, because I want people to say this is real. This is not a parody site. You see that little blue check mark? This indicates that this is, in fact, a real Haaretz tweet. This is not like some Hamas tweet. So the Trump administration, which openly supports Israel, I'll deal with the word alt-right in a second. Can you believe this, people? The United States openly supports Israel. They're not ashamed of it. It's not like a on the down low. Yeah, I'll support you, but only secretly. I'm so ashamed of you in public, but yeah, we're secret friends. Can you believe the chutzpah of the Trump administration to openly support? It's really the only democratic liberal state in the whole region. A reliable military ally that, by the way, requires no U.S. troops on the ground. I should point out there are U.S. troops on the ground in, for example, Turkey. There's the Incirlik Air Base. There are hundreds of U.S. military bases around the world. There is no U.S. military base in Israel. Israel relies on America for a number of things in its defense, but there are no American soldiers in Israel defending Israel from the Arabs. There are American soldiers in Turkey. Until Donald Rumsfeld took them out, there were American soldiers in Saudi Arabia. There are American soldiers, of course, in Iraq, in Syria itself, actually. There's Americans in the United Arab Emirates, in Qatar, in all of these places. Not in Israel. So yeah, Haaretz is outraged that Donald Trump would, but it's crazy that that is written by an Israeli newspaper whose very name, Haaretz, means the land, which implies that there used to be some sort of Zionist spark. They put that back up. I want to read the second half of the tweet. The Trump administration, which openly supports Israel's alt-right government, I'm going to leave the alt-right for last, continues years of U.S. coddling. Is moving your embassy to your nation's capital coddling? Look, if Haaretz doesn't want Israel to exist, if Haaretz doesn't believe Jerusalem is not only the capital of the modern state of Israel, but the capital of the Jewish people going back to the Bible. I mean, just pick up your Bible and look where the word Zion comes from. It's Mount Zion. I mean, if you no longer believe that Jerusalem is the capital of the state of Israel, if you no longer believe that it's the capital of the Jews, if you no longer believe the Bible, why are you in Israel other than an accident? And if you hate it so much, why don't you leave? If you don't believe that Israel is a legitimate country, why are you there? Why don't you go somewhere else? Either go to Europe or North America or move to an Arab country. Why don't you move to the West Bank? Why don't you move to the Gaza Strip? To have that self-loathing, that suicide as an official opinion of the largest liberal newspaper in Israel is such a sickness. I don't think that speaks for mainstream Israelis, but that is the mainstream newspaper. And then the last thing, put the tweet up just one more time. I just had to say this for last. Let me read the whole tweet one more time. The Trump administration, which openly supports Israel's alt-right government, continues years of U.S. coddling. Alt-right. What does alt-right mean? What does it mean? 2 years ago, I think it meant, and it certainly meant to me, just any alternative right-wing point of view, so against the Republican establishment. When I thought alt-right in 2016, I thought of troublemakers like Milo Yiannopoulos. I thought of Breitbart's Steve Bannon taking on the GOP establishment. After Trump was elected, I think alt-right took on a more sour tone, and it started to be dominated not by playful, libertarian troublemakers like Milo, but by racists. I think that the alt-right brand, at its core, and I don't think this is what it was during the 2016 election, but it's racist. I mean, the march in Charlottesville was racist, and I think it was explicitly so. And anti-Semitic. There was a chant at the Charlottesville march, "The Jews will not replace us." It's an anti-Semitic, anti-black ideology. How can a Jew named Benjamin Netanyahu, democratically elected by the Jewish state, how can he be alt-right? I mean, maybe if this was 2016, I would say, oh, I get it, because he's a real conservative and he's a bit of a dissident or something, but I don't think that's what alt-right means in 2018. That tweet is implying that, I don't know, what's it implying, that Benjamin Netanyahu is racist? I don't think he is. Anti-Semitic? I'm going to say nope on that. I don't think the Prime Minister of the Jewish state is anti-Semitic. Why would Haaretz call Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government alt-right? Just in terms of race, an enormous number of Israelis, about 1 million or more, I don't know the demographics offhand, are Arab Jews. They're Jews from Arab lands who physically look dark-skinned. Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Egypt, Iraq. There was quite a large Jewish community in Baghdad, Persian Jews. Many of them were driven out of the Arab and Muslim world to Israel. They are dark-skinned. They're part of the government in the most senior ranks until recently. The president of Israel was a Persian Jew. How can that, I mean, so you're brown and Jewish. How can you be alt-right? And this is a charge leveled by Haaretz. I see a super chat comment from Keith McIntosh with 100 Mexican pesos. Thank you for that. Any truth to the rumor that a Scottish pug was among the wounded in Gaza? You're referring to Count Dankula's bulldog. It's very funny. My point is, what does it even mean when a Jewish newspaper in Israel is calling Israel's government alt-right? I don't even think those things mean anything anymore, other than I guess that's just the smear of the day. It's just really, really weird to call Benjamin Netanyahu a Jew, the Jewish prime minister with a multiracial party. I mean, this is the country that brought in black Jews from Ethiopia en masse, airlifted them. It doesn't make sense, but I think it goes to the moral bankruptcy and the rhetorical bankruptcy of the left. If all they can do is call you racist, they don't got a lot. And when you're calling Netanyahu anti-Semitic racist, you're out of gas, guys. You're out of gas. But I think that what looks insane to you and me in Haaretz and the New York Daily News, that's this anti-Trump derangement syndrome. There's Benjamin Netanyahu derangement syndrome, and it's all in this big stew of the left. I think that accurately represents the center of the U.S. Democrats and the Corbyn Labor Party. It's 12:19. Let's take a short break. We've got an ad, a new one, for John Cardillo's show tonight. Check this out.
Today on Off the Cuff Declassified, Robert Mueller's conflicts of interest grow, this time with a Russian oligarch. Patrick Howley, editor-in-chief of Big League Politics, joins me to discuss that and new discoveries in Hillary's previously lost emails. Turkey's Erdogan is recalling Turkish ambassadors to the United States and Israel. and Benjamin Netanyahu had some pretty harsh words after it happened. And the left is still hysterical over a citizenship question on the next U.S. Census. But Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross tells them to calm down.
Hey, that's my buddy John Cardillo. He leads up our U.S. team, former NYPD cop. He's based in Florida, covers the Blue Lives Matter beat. Very strong on national security, U.S. politics. He's active in Republican circles. I really recommend his show. I don't know if you watch his show, but may I recommend you do it. He's very big on Twitter, too. He's got a great following, and he really gets into the fights. He's a real MAGA guy, Make America Great Again. And he's been very strong on the Israel beat, too, so I recommend watching his show. Let me remind you what we're doing every day from 12 noon to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. I just sit down here in front of the mic, and we have a lightly produced show. What I mean by that, not a lot of produced segments. We just run some video clips or show some websites, as we've done. I try and read your comments if you want yours to stand out, because they're rolling by here, right? I got them on my screen, but I don't really stop and read them. Box addict. Muslims believe Jesus was born of a virgin, but he's not the savior. Mary is looked at highly in Muslim world. Oh, no media talks about that, though. Well, that's an interesting point. If you read the Quran, and I recommend you do, I recommend you read Tommy Robinson's version called Muhammad's Quran, best-selling book. He really gets in there and annotates it. I think it's important to read an annotated Quran. It's like reading a really dense Shakespeare work. It helps to have a little bit of explanation of some of the terms. You will see in Islam. You'll see Mary. You'll see Jesus. You'll see Jacob. You'll see Abraham. They have different names. Maryam, Isa instead of Jesus, Yaqub, Ibrahim instead of Abraham. So yeah, you'll see all the regular characters from the New Testament, from the Jewish Torah, but the story's a bit different. They're considered prophets of Islam, but they're all subordinate to Muhammad. It's quite a thing, and yeah, it's an interesting read. I recommend people read the Quran, because how can you know what's in it, and how can you speak authoritatively about it unless you do? I think people would be surprised what's in the Quran, especially if you've grown up in the West just casually reading the Bible, listening to passages from the Bible at church, even just hearing. I mean, I don't think a lot of people just sit down and study the Bible carefully anymore, other than a small percentage of people who would regard themselves as practicing Christians. But I think anyone who's at least familiar with the Christian Bible would be shocked by the militaristic tone of the Quran. How about read it and let me know what you think? I want to get back to the Gaza attack. I use the word protest. I don't think that's an accurate phrase. There are no protests in Gaza. It's an authoritarian regime. It's a theocratic dictatorship. There was one election once in Gaza, and the Hamas terrorists have run the place ever since. There is no freedom of the press. There's no freedom of religion, of course. There is no freedom of assembly. So when you have a protest, that really means you have a propaganda exercise by the Hamas terrorist group. I want to show you someone else who had this terminological challenge on MSNBC. Was it a protest? And how big of a weapon can you bring for a protest to still be called a protester? And is this the first recorded case in American media history of someone on MSNBC being totally cool with assault rifles? Take a look.
Well, Katie, what I've seen here just yesterday and last Friday was horrible violence. You saw tens of thousands of young people crossing fields between the urban part of Gaza and the Israeli border, essentially trying to walk across this heavily militarized border unarmed. Now, as you know, it's easy to say they were completely unarmed. They had some light weapons. A lot of them would be burning tires or rolling tires to try to melt the razor wire. They had slingshots. They had a new and crazy invention, incendiary kites, where they would try to loft kites and set them on fire to try to light up some of the agricultural fields beyond the border with Israel. But these were hardly the kind of weapons that could frighten any Israeli soldier who were armed. sniper rifles, and who later on in this afternoon were using artillery to fire not only near some of the Hamas locations that they had identified, but even near us, about 100 meters next to me and my team this afternoon. We were nearly hit by some artillery. So it's kind of hard to imagine how these Israeli troops could have been threatened by a lot of these young people who were really not peacefully demonstrating, but peacefully by comparison to the Israeli soldiers. And indeed, no Israeli soldier has been killed, and nearly 100 Palestinians have died in the past 7 weeks of protesting.
Hey guys, they were just lightly armed protesters. I mean, come on. Why are you so square? I mean, why don't you just chill a bit? I mean, they were only lightly armed, and as MSNBC said, it's not the kind of weapons that could inflict a lot of damage on people. So come on, chill out, man. I mean, you can't even have a graham cracker or a cookie cut into the shape of a firearm. You can't even bring a water pistol to school or make a gun with your finger. In liberal American schools, you'll be arrested. But hey, yeah, these Hamas protesters, they're only lightly armed. And by the way, no Jews were killed, so come on. I mean, I want to say something that's so obvious that it needs to be said, because I don't think people say it. Gaza, I mentioned before, there's no freedom of the press there. So that MSNBC reporter was based in Gaza. Now, if he were in Israel, where there's more reporters per population than any other country in the world, actually, he would speak freely. Reporters in Israel criticize Israel all the time, and they are free to do so, and there's no threat to them either legally or physically. In fact, I would say the vast majority of international reporters in Israel are as critical of Israel as the Washington Press Gallery is critical of Trump. It's like 90% hostile. But to be a reporter in Gaza, it's very different. You can't just go into Gaza. Like I say, it is a closed society. It's an authoritarian regime. You need the permission of Hamas. You need their permission. You have to be vetted by them. And if you do a report that does not please them, at best you'll be ejected. At worst, you could be subject to violence. So the very fact that that MSNBC reporter was reporting with the approval and permission of Hamas tells you right away that he is submitting to their regime. If he were on the Israeli side, he could say whatever he wants. You cannot say whatever you want on the Gaza side. Let me just end with an obvious question, which is, if you had 1,000 troops that were lightly armed on the border of the United States with Mexico, do you think that the United States border guard would just let them walk through lightly armed? I don't know. I have another headline I want to show it to you. It's from the Washington Post. Can we put that up for a bit? Israelis kill more than 50 Palestinians in Gaza protests, health officials say. Now, again, I don't know how many Palestinians were killed in these riots, and I'm not sure if quoting Hamas health officials is reliable. But you see the take here: Israelis kill 50 Palestinians. No talk about the riots. No talk about the attempt to march across a foreign border. There's a quote from this I'd like to pull out. Let's just take one quote from it. At a gathering point east of Gaza City, organizers urged protesters over loudspeakers to burst through the fence, telling them Israeli soldiers were fleeing their positions even as they were reinforcing them. I referred to this earlier. I talked about the text messages, over 100,000 text messages whipping up the people. Do you think that headline is an accurate reflection of the salient points in this story? If you had, quote, organizers, they don't say Hamas terrorists, because that would be too much for the Jeff Bezos Washington Post. But what do you make of the culpability of Hamas organizers? Because again, there's no political freedom of association, there's no freedom of assembly in Hamas. It's a terrorist dictatorship. So those organizers would be Hamas terrorists. What do you think the responsibility is when Hamas terrorists are telling women and children, I don't know why you would bring women and children to a riot, to seek martyrdom, telling them to go to march against an international border that is being reinforced by troops? but it's Israelis who are culpable. Well, hey, why should the Washington Post be any more generous towards Israel than the New York Daily News or Haaretz? I said before that Hamas really can't do significant military damage to Israel. They can do horrific terrorist damage. They can lob missiles at civilians. Their move for a while was to dig tunnels under the border, pop up, and literally do raids to kill people, or even more horrifically, take them in a kidnapping back into Gaza. But their real power is through the media, the Western media. You saw how effectively they played the Washington Post and MSNBC. There's a phrase, Pallywood. It's like Palestinian Hollywood. It's the sophisticated spin of Hamas. Let me show you one outtake from Gaza that was not supposed to be seen. I'm not sure who caught this footage, if it was an Israeli soldier or someone, but see, you see that poor man walking on the crutches, and then he just starts running. He starts running and dodging. He's running and dodging. Oh my God, it's the Holy Land. He's been healed. He's been healed, everybody. Yeah, I mean, you could say he's playing around, but he's not. He's part of the Pallywood narrative of there's a poor, injured man who the Israelis are shooting at. I guess he was just joking around, playing around. He's not paralyzed after all. He was just having a little bit too much fun, and there's someone running up to him saying, hey buddy, don't, you're on film. Don't show that you're not actually injured. I want to play our another ad for you. I think today, was it yesterday or was it today, the last day for our early, yesterday was the last day for our early bird pricing for the Rebel Live. Sorry about that if you missed it. But there's still lots of tickets at our regular prices, and I gotta say, our regular prices are still so cheap. I don't even know what we're doing because we're barely covering the cost of all the food. Like, you get a breakfast and a lunch and free parking and a full day of about a dozen great speakers. Here's the ad for the Rebel Live if you're in Toronto or anywhere near it. You'll for sure want to come. Here's an ad for the Rebel Live, including some clips from last year's conference.
We're going to discuss topics that the political elites and the media party don't want us to discuss. Political correctness be damned.
Passion isn't enough of a principle to guide the world by.
Perhaps we are in better touch with the pulse of the country.
We are in this fight with you, and you're all in this fight together.
If you see over the last few years, there's been this populist movement going around the world.
That's the status of the left at this point, is I don't know if you're the Onion or the New York Times.
Postmodernism is a sophisticated philosophy. Now, it's wrong, but it's deeply wrong.
We're simply people with another point of view.
Hey, welcome back. It's 12:33. We're doing our daily chit-chat. We call it Battleground from 12 noon to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. I just sit down here, play some clips, play some ads, tell you what we're up to, and I look at the comments. If you want your comment highlighted in a pretty color, you can chip in $2, $5, or a fella earlier put in 200 Mexican pesos. YouTube sends it to us in our own local currency, so it helps us pay our bills. Sometimes I read any old comment, and Friday is, we call it our Friday free-for-all, where I almost exclusively read comments. I see there's a fella named Zohar, and he says, hey, Ezra, America first. Israel firsters have no place in our government or media, and I'm not anti-Semitic, I'm counter-Semitic. Long live Hezbollah. Other comments like that. I am a Canadian, so I'm a Canada firster, I guess, but I support America first because, of course, America is the leading democracy in the world and our closest ally. So I understand the meaning of America first. I would say I'm an America firster as a Canadian. By that I mean I think the United States should not be part of globalist treaties like the global warming treaty that Trump took America out of. I think multilateral agreements are usually not to America's benefit. Usually bilateral agreements are better. Even look at how Donald Trump is dealing with North Korea and Iran directly rather than through these weak coalitions of the unwilling. I believe in strong borders, if I haven't made that clear. I believe in strong borders between Israel and Gaza and strong borders between the United States and Mexico. And we desperately need a strong border between Canada and the United States because we're taking all the self-deported rabble that are fleeing Donald Trump's execution. That you say there's no room for Israel firsters in our government or media. I don't know if there's any Israel firsters in your government. I presume you're an American. Donald Trump is certainly an America firster, but I think there's room for all points of view in the media, and to say otherwise is frankly contrary to the First Amendment. I don't believe in anti-Semitism or counter-Semitism, which is your foolish word. I think that's just a bigotry. If you have an argument to make against Israel or for Hamas, put the argument. But simply being antipathetic to a race, I don't think that's sufficient. A few more comments I read, and then I've got. I'm going to switch gears because we spent a lot of time talking about Jerusalem and Gaza, but I think it was the big story yesterday, and it was very interesting to see. Dark Sky says Hopkins was a good hiring choice. Thanks very much. He's referring to Katie Hopkins from the UK. You can see all of Katie Hopkins' columns and videos at our specialty website for her. Maybe we can call that up and show it on the screen, guys. It's just hopkinsworld.com. And she recently went to Molenbeek, which is a part of Brussels, the capital of Belgium, which is an overwhelmingly Muslim location. Not just Muslim, but extremist, not just in their de facto Sharia law, but the fact that, just throw it up on the screen just to take a look. See, there you go. You can see that she wore a burqa in Molenbeek, and here's what happened. She went outside where the Battleground attack was planned. She confronted the mayor of Molenbeek. There's some just great work there. And of course, she's coming to Toronto on June 2nd for the Rebel Live. She does all sorts of interesting work, so that's at hopkinsworld.com. I'm glad you like her. Dark Sis says, notice my comment, the Rebel has sucked since you got rid of Faith. Okay, well, that's your opinion. We have a lot of different talent here at the Rebel, and you can take it or leave it. So obviously, you're still taking it if you're watching. If you're watching here, if Muslim women don't like weed, how come they're always getting stoned? That's what MCHL Smith says. That's sort of funny, but it's also terribly sad, isn't it? Jonathan Bryant, President Trump is the first world leader to make peace with word and not war. Hippies should love him. Isn't that the truth, eh? I mean, he's de-escalated North Korea to the point where North Korea is releasing hostages, pledging to disassemble his nukes within weeks. He brought 50 Arab leaders together in Saudi Arabia. There's a rapprochement going on with Israel. If he was a liberal, he would have had 2 Nobel Prizes by now. That's a very good point. Lauren Southern says, did you go to Ryerson? I did not, but our David Menzies did, and he'll have a report on that. Jack Vanderpool says, can someone explain why Rebel media ain't successful like it used to be a year ago? Well, I'm not sure what that means, successful. There's different ways to measure success. There's editorial success, political success, commercial success, journalistic success. You'll have to explain why you don't think we're successful. We have new people joining us, and this year we had a ton of great videos from Dr. Sebastian Gorka. He's a little bit busy, so he's not doing them on a daily basis anymore. Katie Hopkins joined us this year. John Cardillo ramped up to a full-time show. Out of Hollywood, we have Ben Davies and Amanda Head. So we actually hit with Rob Shimshock doing a daily video out of Washington, D.C. So a lot of American content. On the Canadian side, David Menzies doing more videos than ever. So, you know, I mean, we're 3.5 years old, and we have had some staff turnover, and we've brought aboard new talent. We're always on the hunt for new talent. But you're here, and I guess that's what counts. Gary Kumper says, I liked, thank you. Philda says, I think the only thing that Rebel is missing is a bit more optimism. That's what people need. Fair enough, you know. Optimism or hope might be a better word. I think you're right. we need to be hopeful. I think there are some hopeful signs. Frankly, I think in world affairs, Donald Trump is very cause for hope. I think in Canada, the pendulum is swinging back against the Liberals. I'm hopeful that Ontario, Kathleen Wynne will lose the election next month. I'm almost certain that Rachel Notley will lose the election in Alberta next year. I think Justin Trudeau, I'm not hopeful enough that he will lose the next election, but I think the shine has come off that shiny pony. Let me put it that way. I see Joyce Reeves has a comment, or not a comment, just a super chat for $10. Thanks very much. If you have a comment, I'll try and read it. Gary Cumber says, Ezra, you're doing an awesome job. Keep up the good work. Thanks very much. Michael Smith said, it is very sad because there is hidden truth in the statement. That's the point. I want to show you just maybe the dumbest story. I mean, on the internet, there's no winner to the contest of dumbest story of the day, dumbest tweet of the day. It is a bottomless pit of stupid. Would you agree with me? Especially Twitter, where everyone has their hot takes, their white hot takes. And the crazier your hot take, and the faster you write it, and the more insane it is, the more buzz it will get. Let me show you what I think is the craziest hot take yesterday on Twitter. This is actually reported in the Scottish Sun, which is a sister of London's Sun. Let me just read, fat fight. Nicola Sturgeon vows to curb junk food promotions by banning 2-for-1 pizzas as she meets TV chef Jamie Oliver. The First Minister of Scotland pledged to tackle multi-buy promos as she announced a target of halving child obesity by 2020. That's pretty dumb. I mean, I'm just trying to think of what I could possibly say that shows that to be as dumb as it is. I think it just speaks for itself. What was that? I put that up for one second. What was the tagline they had there at the very top there? Fat fight. That's right. Fat fight. So my first point is, thank God we've got Nicola Sturgeon worried about 2-for-1 pizza deals, because she has cleared everything less important off her desk to tackle this crisis. Unemployment, terrorism, North Korea, Russia, Israel. Not that Scotland would have much to say about those things, perhaps. No. That's not important. What's important is 2-for-1 pizza. And why pizza? Why pizza? Why not other foods? You know, there's a certain snobbery. I wrote a book about a decade ago called The War on Fun. I don't even know if you can get that online anymore. And I remember writing about tobacco. And you know what's really low class is cigarettes, right? But you know what's really high class? Cigars. And you know what's totally hipster? Pipes. You see those bloody hipsters with their corduroy jackets, with the shoulder pad or the elbow patches, smoking a pipe? It's so frustrating. When I see that, and cigars. I don't know if it's still a magazine. I haven't paid attention in a while, but Cigar Aficionado. That is the high-end luxury, high-class tobacco magazine, isn't it? Cigar Aficionado. I mean, it's not Cigarette Weekly. It's Cigar Aficionado. And all your social justice warriors love to be on the cover of Cigar Aficionado. Arnold Schwarzenegger, obviously. The top 25 cigars of 2017. Yeah, so I guess Cigar Aficionado is still online. Click on some of the covers. Let's look at some of the covers, because they always have Churchill. Well, of course, he was a great smoker. But scroll down and look at some of the other covers. They always have the coolest, but keep going now. There's a Michael Jordan. I don't know who Maggie Siff is. That's how out of it I am. Click that. Let's just look at some more, because I wanted to show you how cool it is. This Schwarzenegger. You can't find a more annoying environmentalist do-gooder than Schwarzenegger these days. I honestly don't even know who saw it. Ray Lewis, obviously, but I don't even. My point is that it's cool. If you smoke cigars, you're cool, but nothing is less cool than cigarettes. If you drink a fine wine, that's cool. But if you drink a cheap beer, you're low class. And I put it to you, it's the same way with fatty foods. If you have a fine pâté de foie gras. And afterwards, have the finest cheesecake. Mademoiselle, would you like another port? Or would you like an after dinner cigar, madame? Well, then you're just all class, aren't you? But you're a severely normal working class bloke who wants a pizza, and he sees a 2-for-1 deal and says, okay, I got a whole family. I was going to order 2 anyways. This looks like it's cheaper. I'll go for the 2-for-1 pizza. Oh, no, monsieur, that is so low class. You have to have, you can't, I think there's a classism there. And all of Jamie Oliver's pretense to being just a regular guy, he's the biggest damn hypocrite around. Do you see my analogy? Pipe is hipster, cigar is the cool kids with the high class, and cigarettes are for the white trash. That's the implication, and it's the same thing with this war on food. The day the fancy people who are calling for you not to have your 2-for-1 pizzas, the day they give up their fine cheeses. Like, what's wrong with pizza? Okay, it's cheese, it's got fat in it. Yeah. All right, well, you tell me when they're going to give up their fine brie. That's what they're cheese snobs in a way, aren't they? They want their camembert, their fine blue cheese. Monsieur is very fine. But you want some mozzarella on a pizza. There's a bit of a classism there, isn't there? That's my view. Let's just take a look at the clock. I'm chatting about pizzas. I'm getting hungry. You know what? I do the show. I haven't had my lunch yet. No wonder I'm talking about 2-for-1 pizzas. Let's take a look at some of the comments. Sheila Gunn, I'm here for the accents. Thank you very much. Don't get me started on my Caribbean accent, because then I will get I'll probably get a human rights complaint. But I say it out of love. I mean, in fact, when I'm in the Caribbean, I feel like I'm sort of at home. Let's read some comments. Didn't Stalin smoke cigars? A lot of people smoke cigars. I mean, Castro, obviously, Cuba is famous for cigars. George Burns smoked 13 big, cheap Mexican cigars every day. And he lived into his 90s, didn't he? How about good crack and bad crack? Well, you know what? You're joking around, but cocaine versus crack, what are the differences in sentences? That's a Marxist, leftist critique, but there's probably some truth to it, that if you're a fancy person, you're probably using the finer powdered cocaine as opposed to crack. I don't know enough about that. MSNBC, Canadian girl writes, MSNBC hates Israel. I think that's sort of standard for all media, including, as I proved to you, Haaretz itself. Lorne Southern, spelt the masculine way. Ezra's going to be up on cultural appropriation charges for his accents. You are so right on that. But as I point out to anyone who talks about cultural appropriation is, if you're speaking English, and if you sign your checks 2018, which is measured from Jesus' birthday, you're culturally appropriating Anglo-Christian history. If you're wearing a suit rather than, I don't know, whatever your ethnic garb is, you're appropriating, and that's what culture is. It's appropriating, sharing, learning, evolving together as people, as humans. Wayne Daniel, my granddad always said, all pizza is posh cheese on toast. You know what? Good. Well, that's right. You know, you'd call it a crostini. Ah, Signor Ezzerini, would you like some crostini? Yeah, and I'll pay double for it what I pay at Pizza or Domino's, and that way Jamie Oliver, you don't think Jamie Oliver has the fattiest, cheesiest recipes? He just doesn't like working class food, affordable to the working class. I remember when I was a teenager, one of my favorite jobs of all time was being a waiter in sort of a mid-stratus, semi-fast food restaurant in Calgary, Canada called Earl's Tin Palace. And it was sort of fake fine food, like they had tablecloths, but they weren't linen. And I can't remember, maybe they didn't have tablecloths, but it was pretend fancy, but it was still affordable. I loved working there as a waiter. I worked there for 4 years, summers and evenings when I was in school. I remember the manager on our first day when we were being trained, and let me check the time, 12:49, I got time for the story. We were talking about the price of an Earl's hamburger, and this is 20 years ago. So let's say the price was like $8.95 or something. It was a really good hamburger. It was a little bit gourmet. Earl's hamburgers were great. And he talked about the Big Mac, and he said, which is a better value? And this was the boss at Earl's, which was sort of an affordable, fancy restaurant, and I was just 18 or whatever. I was working there as a waiter. I was totally into Earl's. It was very exciting. First job as a waiter. And he said, no, don't be a snob. McDonald's, dollar for dollar, is the best value out there. Like he was at a slightly fancy restaurant, and he was giving a mad shout out to McDonald's. And if you look for what you spend at a McDonald's Big Mac, it's actually dollar for dollar the best value you're going to get for hamburgers. And if you're just trying to buy nutrition for your family, in terms of affordability in the entire sweep of history, is there a more affordable time to eat than today? And yeah, you don't want to eat junk food all the time, but my point is, what's the difference between a Big Mac and a hamburger that you buy at a fancy restaurant that has maybe a fancier cheese? It's got the same fat in the meat. It's got the same fancy sauces if you go to these fancy places. That's snobbery, and I'm getting hungry. Okay, I can break for lunch in 10 minutes. Let's read some more comments. Jackie Sharp, no such thing as bad pizza, just some that we like better than others, kind of like beer. Okay, fair enough. Entry required, I make our pizza dough and sauce from scratch. We can have it any day of the week with whatever topping we want. Okay, thank you very much. My point here is that Jamie Oliver and Nicola Sturgeon are going to ban 2 for 1, and that's just so stupid. I mean, so then are you going to ban 3 for 1s? Or maybe you just have a half price deal? It's not even that people are necessarily eating more. It's just a marketing gimmick. It's just a way of getting people to pay an extra $1 or something. It's not like 2 for 1 pizza is any more calorie rich than 1 for 1 pizza. And people are going to eat as much as they are going to eat if they're hungry. The levels of stupid here. Okay, stop everybody. I know you want to talk about unemployment, and I know you want to talk about taxes, and I know you want to talk about moral issues from gay marriage to abortion to transgenderism, and I know you want to talk about foreign affairs, and I know you want to talk about creeping Islam, but everybody, you're just going to have to wait, because I'm just putting all of you on the back burner until we deal with the crisis in Scotland today, which is 2 for 1 pizza deals, because the great scholar Jamie Oliver is here today, and he has deeply touched my soul, and I never really knew what my call to office was. Why was I in public service until Jamie told me it's to ban 2 for 1 coupons, by the way, if they really are a deal, so you're making food more affordable. If someone wants pizza, they're going to get their goddamn pizza, and at best, at worst, a 2 for 1 pizza deal is just cheaper. The snobbery, the stupidity, the social engineering. My book a dozen years ago was called The War on Fun, and Jamie Oliver, for all his pretense of being a fun guy, is just a bit of a manipulative creep who wants to social engineer what I eat. You know what? We got a little kitchen here at the office, and I'm going to look in there. I don't think we have any frozen pizza. Well, you know what? We do. We probably do. We got pizza pockets, and just to spite Jamie Oliver, I'm going to have me some pizza, and I'm going to have 2 instead of 1. That's the opposite of a hunger strike. Some people, when they get mad, and they have a hunger strike for protest. When I get mad, I stress eat, and I'm going to eat 2 pizzas instead of 1. That's my not very silent protest against Jamie Oliver and Nicola Sturgeon. And there you have it. It's 12:53. Let's read some more comments. What's the carbon footprint of a pizza? Well, there you go. Gary Cumper says ban 2 for 1 fixes everything in the Marxist mind. It's just okay. So you know what? It just doesn't make sense. So are you still gonna sell large pizzas? And let's say you ban an extra large pizza. Okay, so someone will just buy 2 small pizzas. Like have these people done anything in real life? Do they live in real life? Ali Clark says, laugh out loud, Ezra, thank you. Top Shelf, who gets the 3 pizzas to eat anyways besides a large family? Yeah, what business is it of the state? By what right? By what, Scotland, I've never been to Scotland. I've been to the lower parts of the UK myself. I've never been further north than Newcastle and Manchester with Tommy, some of our interesting trips up there. I'd love to go to Scotland. I can't get enough of that Scottish accent, and so much of the free world is because of Scotland, whether it's Adam Smith or so much of the history of, and there's so many things I like about Scotland, including Canada, which is basically a Scottish creation. The Scots had one half, the French had the other. They built Canada, and so many of our most wonderful characteristics are Scottish in nature. But I say to you that the Scotland of the past, the Scotland that was so key to the Industrial Revolution, the capitalist revolution, and the founding of Canada, is not the Scotland today. The Scotland today are a bunch of whiny, socialist, small, I mean, like, if your big deal is banning 2-for-1 pizzas, you've come down a bit in the world since Adam Smith, haven't you? You've come down a bit in the world. All right, I see there's a super chat. Ezra's first irregulars, keep up the good work. After chat, open to all. Thanks for the £1.99. John Sheeland, Ezra's passionate about his food. This is great stuff. Entry required, don't get caught with a potato peeler in Scotland. I was talking about this the other day. I mean, I follow about 10 British and UK police forces, and they're on this, you know, this warpath against knives. And because, of course, you ban guns and people use knives. You ban knives, people use acid, whatever. I mean, people are going to hurt each other no matter what. It goes back to Cain and Abel. I suppose you could ban rocks too, but there's too many of them to ban. So there's all these police forces tweeting pictures of like garden tools, and oh my god. All right, it's 12:55. Do we have time for one more ad? Do we have the Save the Christians ad? Hey guys, I want to tell you, it's ready. It's finally ready. I'm not sure if I told you before. Our Save the Christians documentary is now for sale. It's done. It's ready. We had the premiere in Toronto, and then we had the Western premiere in Calgary, and now you can order it DVD if you're old school, like me, or if you're really fancy, video on demand. It's ready. SaveTheChristians.com. We got a little ad. Take a look.
صراحة صار الضرب الصبح الفجر فاحنا ما قدرنا نطلع يعني. هي مستوى خازق كنيسة. يعني قالوا تأسلمون يشروا الإسلام. لا. بشم بابو ألا أو الرحم الله.
Well, available soon. How soon? Well, how soon is now, mister? Hannah, let's change that ad to say available now at SaveTheChristians.com. I'm very proud of that documentary. It's our first documentary effort. It's a 1-hour documentary. It's TV talk for 44 minutes. And I hope you like it. I hope you like it. I think the plight of Christians in the Muslim world is underreported. I think that, my view is that the United Nations doesn't give a damn about Christian refugees, or Yazidis, really, who are another religious denomination. I think we do. And we went to Iraq to show it. We're almost done. It's 12:58. We're going to finish sharp at 1 p.m. and we'll be back tomorrow. We're tweaking things. I see some comments about the audio. We'll see if we can fix that. We are aiming, hopefully this week, to add streams on Periscope and Facebook Live. So we'll triple the ways people can be part of this chat. A couple minutes left. I'll just read a few more. Lauren said that I want Ezra to do Scottish accents next show. I need to get into the mindset of the accent before I do it. Otherwise, I get mixed up. I've been doing so many accents: Australian, British, Caribbean, French, Italian, Hebrew, Russian. Maybe I'll do an accent show. Maybe, and that will get us so many human rights complaints. It's 12:59. Allie Clark says, still issues with notifications. Yes, we've heard that, and I don't know why. We have an a YouTube helper-outer who's, we've asked him for advice. I'm not sure if we've heard back from him yet. Top Shelf says, where can I watch the documentary? SaveTheChristians.com. SaveTheChristians.com. Are you guys trolling with the volume? No, we are trying to fix that. We've had some complaints about it. I obviously just hear myself through my own voice, but we are aware of it. Our Condre puts Ezra in the Jewish quotes. Yeah, I'm Jewish. What's your problem? You know. Lauren Southern says, accent show would be a bomb. Thank you. Or would bomb. Be the bomb or it would bomb. Those are different things. Folks, it's 1 p.m. And 1 p.m. couldn't come quick enough. I was about to do some accents and talk about more food. We should have a whole food show called What's Your Beef? And we'll just talk about beef. We'll save that for another day. We're done. It's 1 p.m. I'll see you tonight at 8 p.m. on my show Behind a Paywall. I hope you can make it. It's actually a great show. We got this video. I won't give it away. We'll see you tonight at 8 p.m. If not, we'll see you tomorrow at 12 noon. Same time, same channel. Until then, on behalf of all of us here at Rebel World Headquarters, keep fighting for freedom and 2-for-1 pizzas. Bye-bye.